Well, buenas tardes and guten Abend to everyone. Today we'll talk about Europe and how what is currently called power is gradually changing. The thing is, elections are coming up soon in Germany, France, and some other countries. And the people coming to power are not at all the ones these representatives would like to see. It's either Soros or who knows who is currently in power and causing all this madness. But those who come next could also cause madness. That's the problem, you see? Let's start from the beginning. Subscribe to the channel and let's go. So Germany is basically facing an economic catastrophe.
The credit analytics agency predicts that due to Germany's national debt being 60 to 65% of GDP, a credit rating downgrade is possible.
Plus, in the 2027 budget, Berlin plans to spend almost 30 on debt servicing. For such a wealthy country, this is not good at all. That's why Germany could lose its top credit rating. By the way, let me remind you, I think it was either in 2002 or 2004 when there was a similar situation, but it wasn't as complicated as this one. So, in other words, it's almost a foregone conclusion here. The agency reported that the country's rating, as we are told, could be at risk if Germany's economic indicators turn out to be significantly lower than our forecasts. What does a downgrade mean? It means such an increase in interest rates on government bonds. Right now, the debt is 65, which is significantly higher than in the Netherlands, Sweden, and especially Denmark. There it's only 25%, 27%.
The U.S., of course, has twice as much debt as Germany, but since Washington is currently at least the global hegemon, it's losing its position, but slowly.
That's why there are still some levers of influence on the situation happening inside the country. By the state, I mean America. But Germany has fewer chances. Next year, in the 2027 budget, Germany plans to spend 629 billion euros, of which 196 billion will go to servicing new debts. Finances are in a bad state, as we can see, and debt expenses are rapidly increasing. In 2026, it's 30 billion, in 2027, 42, and in 2030, 81.
A little more like that. And then there's this story about how some Kaja, or maybe not a Kaja, but a Padishah, I think lost a chess game to an ordinary commoner.
When he asked, hey, why don't you give me as much rice as can fit on the board? So, first, we put 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 grains on the second, 4 on the third, 16 on the fourth, and so on. And in the end, this very Padishah just got furious because there isn't that much rice on the whole earth. Servicing the national debt is roughly like that very game. The economist warns that the problems can only be solved through reforms, but time is running out. And if Chancellor Merz does nothing, then naturally time just keeps passing and passing.
The example of Greece should show Germany that not only the level of debt is important, but also the trust of investors. If debt rises sharply and the economy doesn't develop, the consequences can be very serious.
High debts also threaten the savings of German citizens. The European Central Bank is keeping interest rates low so as not to worsen the debt crisis for the state, which means depositors will continue to receive low interest rates. Well, at least they will continue to receive them, because soon inflation will start, and then, if anyone remembers, there's such a thing as hyperinflation when you get your salary in the morning, which could be enough for a whole month, but in the evening you go and buy just a loaf of bread with that money. This happened in the Russian Federation as well, and in Ukraine and in Belarus. In general, those were times of turmoil and banditry in the 1990s. And if this happens on a global scale, then at least those who moved to Europe or the US often found a better life there. But now, it's hard to know where to go. It's not good there, and it's not good here. No matter where you turn, you hit a wall. It's like choosing between 2 chairs, but one is sharpened and, well, both chairs are awful. What next? Elections. All the candidates tried a little harder. And here in Germany, we have a new, well, not a new party, but the prospect that a new party will come to power. This is the AfD, which has never been in power before, and gradually it is gaining more and more supporters. Looking at what those in power are doing, people try to choose something different. But here, by the way, it's worth a warning. They also made choices like that in Ukraine. And many people, including myself, didn't like Poroshenko. In fact, I left Ukraine as soon as this person started running things there. And then Zelensky came, and we were very happy about it, even in Russia. And if you don't believe me, watch my other video. There's a segment with Skobiva where she talks about how great he is.
Kiselev talks about how great Zelensky is.
So, in the end, what happened? A lot has changed, but not really in the direction we wanted. And the same thing could happen with all these different right-wing and left-wing parties. They gain support with populist slogans, stop migration, protect the country from migrants, fix the economy. And then suddenly they'll say, oh, you know, the situation in Europe is complicated. The war is getting closer. Let's spend more money on the war.
And here we need to support Ukraine and the migrants. Let's also take a few more million from Syria. We'll form military units out of them.
So, in general, I wouldn't be too happy about someone new coming in, but on the other hand, it seems like there's no choice. In short, the situation is extremely complicated. We're being told that, first of all, Schengen will be closed if this very AfD comes to power, and the problem starts at the German border, says Alice Weidel. We'll close it, we'll leave Schengen so that people like Sturi can't get in at all. According to her, Schengen assumes protected external EU borders with no permanent internal controls. And if the external borders aren't protected, then you have to strengthen internal controls so that, well, all sorts of valuable specialists don't get in. She also says that the AfD opposes the current agreements on EU border control and intends to stop the practice of bringing Afghans to Germany. Afghans will no longer be brought here, and Syrians will be sent back to their homeland. Right now, there are about 1.3 million Syrians in Germany. At the same time, the German government continues to grant citizenship to some of them, not to mention benefits. Previously, it was said that if things improved in Syria, everyone could be sent home.
But somehow things didn't work out. They just weren't lucky.
That's why this very AfD is going to fix what we have now.
What's next? Elon Musk strongly supports AfD and says, yes, great, let's do it. Let's change everything now. He says this is Germany's only hope.
Helt hållet fine in the HSETIC, the lån måten samt att hela på lån, and with in the priority. It supports restricting immigration, strengthening national sovereignty, and revising the climate agenda. And AfD is gaining popularity precisely against the backdrop of all the events happening right now. Well, apparently this party holds a special place in Musk's heart. Similarly, French parties, including Marine Le Pen's, have broadly similar party platforms and campaign programs. The leader of the National Rally Party quietly outpaces other contenders, as is shown once again by the poll results. And in all versions of the poll, no matter who participates or in which round, Le Pen receives between 35 and 38% of the votes, which is significantly more than her competitors.
The second place goes to the founder of the unsubmissive France Party, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with a result of 16 to 17%.
Well, if this same Le Pen wins, then again, they might close the Schengen area. She has threatened to do that. In general, to leave the European Union. In general, there will be such chaos and instability with these new parties that no one will be left unaffected. The rhetoric might change, as I said, but that doesn't mean they will do what they promise. We've seen it many times over the past years, even decades, how a party that seems quite normal comes to power, and the leader of this party seems like a normal person, you know, you've heard what they say, you've seen them, you know how they behave, and then some crazy stuff starts happening. Besides Le Pen, we will also have Raphael Glucksmann. Glucksmann is a 46-year-old former essayist, a member of the European Parliament, and the leader of the center-left Place Publique. He announced his candidacy for President of France. In short, another leftist, not in the sense of being useless, but in the sense of being center-left. A politician among the ranks of those very politicians lined up to take their shot in the upcoming elections. In France, elections are coming too. They won't be simple or easy. Poland. We've already talked about Poland. There's a problem with the farmers there. They're rising up. They're also rebelling against the European Union.
Let me remind you, it's because the European Union made an agreement to import products into the EU from South American countries.
And the products there don't always meet the standards set by the European Union. The Poles, who have spent a huge amount of money.
Farmers. Farmers, who spent all that money to bring everything up to standard, are dissatisfied.
And you can understand them, but there's even more interesting information. The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs is planning to completely cut off all ties with Ukraine if the so-called Pantheon of Heroes is established. These are the remains that are now being brought from Ukraine. They will place Bandera and also Roman Shukevich there.
Then Poland will break off relations with Ukraine. And as far as we can see, Zelensky is not going to stop. They keep bringing the remains of all these Nazis.
Well, there you go. They don't think about anything at all.
Polish Foreign Minister Marcin Basacki warned Ukraine about possible serious consequences for European integration if Stepan Bandera and Roman Shukevich appear in the national pantheon. According to him, every country independently decides whom to consider its national heroes. That's true, but if they suddenly choose someone like Bandera for this pantheon,
and Shukevich, then there will be no path into the European Union, at least to the extent that it depends on Poland. Basacki also mentioned the recent reburial of Yevhen Konovalets. He says that there were almost no representatives from the EU. Well, that's actually surprising. Why weren't they there? Well, it was nonsense. They were transporting the body in some kind of armored vehicle. Then all sorts of different people were touching those bones. Then they had torches and staged torchlight processions. Well, I think that's normal for Europe. A European leader wouldn't go to that kind of insane circus. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Basacki said that all of this was a Polish diplomatic action, because no one went.
Ukraine knows that under the banners of those who killed, by the way, not only Poles, but also some Ukrainians, as well as Czechs, Jews, and Roma. That is, the creators, having fallen into the darkest period of its activity in 1943-44 Ukraine, will have huge problems with integration into Europe. Well, it seems to me that the relationship between Poland and Ukraine has almost reached rock bottom. It's unlikely to get any better. And it could definitely get worse. All that's left is to marvel at Zelensky's latest talent, which is ruining all of this, and the whole group around him too. Well, he might have a bad relationship with the Polish contingent. But with Europe as a whole, everything is just fine. The European Commission decided that Kyiv doesn't have enough money. They urgently need more. So they allocated 6 billion euros for military expenses. Give them the money. And now they've received the money. This is all within the framework of the 990 billion euro EU loan. I wouldn't be surprised if it grows into a 900 billion one. And this tranche is being allocated. What are the funds intended for? Air defense and missile defense systems. Missiles, ammunition, radar stations, which Ukraine desperately needs. And in Brussels, they also pointed out that the tranche is being allocated against the backdrop of increased Russian attacks using ballistic missiles and drones.
In general, everything is great, everything is needed, money is being allocated, money is circulating, and on top of that, Europe is urgently militarizing, as I have repeatedly said.
Here we are told that the number of sabotage incidents at Europe's arms factories is increasing. Well, that's never happened before. And now it's written again that there are all sorts of problems in Estonia, Italy, Bulgaria, and the Czech Republic.
Here, various suspicious individuals are being detained as well.
And there are explosions happening in Italy and Bulgaria as well. By the way, back then, they didn't find any outsiders. Well, now, I think they'll urgently find the right business cards to show everyone what's going on. Earlier this year, a fire completely destroyed a Czech factory that produces vision-type drones and thermal imaging optics for Ukraine. 4 suspects were detained. Well, right away they blamed Moscow for it, all that stuff. And on top of everything else, even the Baltic trio started speaking out there. For example, one of them says that they don't believe in a peace agreement. Someone has to win. And that should be Ukraine. We've wasted too much time talking about peace agreements. That's Latvia's prime minister. Now, let's look at some valuable information. So, how many armies are there in Latvia? It turns out just one with 1,700 people. Not even 2,000 people, there aren't that many. So, as I understand it, one company cleans the toilets and another company fills them.
There are some cyclists who go around getting Zubraka or vodka for everyone, or whatever it is they drink there.
And maybe there's even an armored personnel carrier, honestly, I don't know. Write down what important weapons they have there. Or maybe don't even write it down, otherwise later they'll say it's all someone's doing, either Zelensky's, or Putin's, or someone else's. They gather and collect valuable information. about such a powerful army so that later they can defeat it with a sudden strike. Well, that's how things are. And all of this adds to the burden of environmental problems. I mean climate change. That very same shallowing of navigable rivers. Then inflation is now starting to accelerate. Rising food prices. At the gas station today in Spain, I saw that gasoline was already at 2 something. That's in Spain, which has agreements, I think, with Nigeria and Algeria.
About supplying all sorts of petroleum products, let's say, at a low price.
Everything is getting more expensive. And in Germany, how much is it now? 2.3? Please write in the comments how much gasoline costs where you are. Recently, they said that at the gas station it was €2.30. And all of this keeps increasing and increasing. I remember, well, in Spanish stores there was just frozen juice. It used to cost 75 cents. Now it costs 2.50 or 2.30. That's just crazy. Not everything has gotten that expensive. But apparently there's more to come. And these interest rates, there are also mortgages and all kinds of insurance, including social insurance. Everything is going downhill to a place we definitely wouldn't want to end up, but apparently we'll have to. Well, that's all for now. Goodbye, everyone.
The process of transferring the remains of our heroes is underway. I am a strong supporter of the idea that Ukraine, the Ukrainian state, is obliged to rebury the fighters for Ukraine's freedom and its heroes from abroad, wherever they may be, back home.